Have you ever wondered what would feel like to have someone step into your life at the lowest moment and change everything? Imagine working tirelessly day after day, barely making ends meet, and then one day, a stranger walks in and turns your world upside down. What would you do if you found out that person was your boss, watching you all along? Let's dive into a story that will make you believe in the power of kindness and second chances. But before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far our stories reach across the globe. Now, let's begin. In a small town called Willow Creek, there lived a young woman named Clara. Clara was in her late 20s, with a heart full of dreams but a life full of struggles. She worked as a cashier at a local grocery store called Fresh Stop every day. She woke up at 5 a.m., took 2 buses to get to work, and stood on her feet for hours, scanning items and smiling at customers. But behind that smile was a heavy heart. Clara was barely making enough to pay her rent, let alone save for the future. Her biggest dream was to buy a small house for herself and her younger brother, Liam, who was in high school. But with the way things were going, that dream felt impossible. One day, a new employee joined the store. His name was Daniel. He was in his early 40s, with a calm demeanor and a friendly smile. Daniel introduced himself as a temporary worker, helping out during the busy holiday season. Clara didn't think much of him at first. He was just another face in the crowd. But there was something different about Daniel. He was always observing, watching how people worked, how they treated each other, and how they handled challenges. Clara noticed this, but didn't pay much attention. She had too much on her mind. A few weeks went by, and Clara's struggles only grew worse. Her landlord had raised the rent, and she was barely scraping by. One evening, after a long shift, Clara sat in the break room, staring at her paycheck. Tears filled her eyes as she realized how little she had left after paying bills. Daniel walked in and saw her sitting there, looking defeated. He sat down across from her and asked, "Everything okay?" Clara wiped her tears and forced a smile. "Yeah, just a long day," she said, not wanting to burden him with her problems. Daniel nodded but didn't push. Instead, he said, Sometimes life feels like a storm, but storms don't last forever. The sun always comes out eventually." Clara looked at him, surprised by his words. There was something comforting about the way he spoke, but she didn't know how to respond. So she just nodded and said, "Thanks, Daniel." Over the next few days, Daniel started helping Clara more at work. He'd offer to cover her breaks, help her stock shelves, and even stayed late to make sure she wasn't walking home alone in the dark. Clara appreciated his kindness, but still didn't understand why he was going out his way for her. One night, as they were closing the store together, Clara finally asked him, "Why are you being so nice to me? You don't even know me." Daniel paused for a moment, then smiled. "Sometimes, people just need a little help, and I believe in paying it forward." Clara didn't know what to say. She felt a lump in her throat as she whispered, "Thank you." But what Clara didn't know was that Daniel wasn't just a temporary worker. He was the CEO of Fresh Stop's parent company. He had gone undercover to see how his employees were treated and to understand the challenges they faced. And what he saw in Clara touched him deeply. Her dedication, her kindness to customers, and her quiet strength in the face of adversity inspired him. He knew he had to do something to help her. One evening, after the store had closed, Daniel asked Clara to stay back for a moment. She was confused but agreed. They sat in the break room, and Daniel looked at her with serious expression. "Clara, I need to tell you something," he said. Clara's heart raced. Was she in trouble? Had she done something wrong? But before she could say anything, Daniel continued, "I'm not who you think I am. I'm actually the CEO of this company. I've been working here undercover to see how things are run and to understand the challenges our employees face." Clara's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're the CEO?" she stammered. Daniel nodded. "Yes, and I've seen how hard you work, Clara. I've seen the struggles you're facing, and I want to help you." Clara didn't know what to say. Her mind was spinning. But before she could process everything, Daniel said, "I've arranged for you to receive a promotion. You'll be the assistant manager of this store with a significant raise." And I've also set up a fund to help you buy a house. Tears streamed down Clara's face as she listened to his words. She couldn't believe this was happening. Why? Why are you doing this for me? She asked, her voice trembling. Daniel smiled softly. Because you deserve it, Clara. You've worked hard, and you've never given up, even when things were tough. That kind of determination and spirit deserves to be rewarded. Clara was speechless. She felt a mix of emotions, gratitude, relief, and disbelief. But most of all, she felt hope. For the first time in a long time, she felt like her dreams were within reach. The next few weeks were a whirlwind for Clara. She started her new role as assistant manager, and with her raise, she was finally able to save money. Daniel kept his promise and helped her find a small house in a safe neighborhood. When Clara walked through the front door for the first time, she broke down in tears. It was a modest home, but to her, it was a palace. It was a place where she and Liam could build a future together. But the story doesn't end there. A few months later, Daniel called Clara into his office. He had another surprise for her. Clara, I've been so impressed with your work and your dedication that I want to offer you a position at our corporate office. You'll be in charge of employee relations, helping us create programs to support our staff and make sure they're treated fairly. Clara was overwhelmed. She had never imagined her life could change so much in such a short time, but she knew this was her chance to make a difference, not just for herself, but for others who were struggling like she once had. As she sat in her new office, looking out at the city skyline, Clara thought about how far she had come. She thought about the storm Daniel had mentioned and how the sun had finally come out, and she made a promise to herself to always pay it forward, just like Daniel had done for her. So, what's the moral of this story? It's simple. Kindness can change lives. Sometimes, all it takes is one person believing you, to see your potential, and to give you a chance. And when you're given that chance, don't forget to pass it on. Because the world needs more kindness, more hope, and more stories like Clara's. Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Stories like these remind us of the power of kindness, courage, and standing up for what's right. If this story touched your heart, made you think, or inspired you in any way, let us know in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to share this story with others. Sometimes, a simple act of sharing can make a huge impact. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our community. We've got more heartfelt stories coming your way. Until next time, remember, kindness changes lives. See you soon.